Last time we left David Coverdale standing at the end of North Winds, 2 solo albums deep, a sound that was getting heavier and more confident by the day, and a growing feeling that the solo artist experiment had run its course. The music was pointing somewhere specific. The only question was whether he was ready to follow it there. Turns out he was. And all it took was a Soho basement, a 2-guitar attack he hadn't planned on, and a Bobby Blue Bland cover that nobody thought would amount to anything. This is the story of Snakebite, the EP, the record that turned the solo career into a band, the record that introduced the world to Whitesnake, and the record that contains what might be the most important 4 minutes in David Coverdale's entire career, even though he almost didn't put it on there. Quick recap of where we are. March 1976. Deep Purple implodes, Coverdale retreats, relocates to Munich, links up with guitarist Micky Moody and records Whitesnake, a loose soulful blues and funk record that barely registers commercially but proves he can still exist outside the Purple machine. Then comes Northwoods in 1978, where everything tightens up, new rhythm section, heavier grooves, a more commanding vocal presence, and tracks like Queen of Hearts and Breakdown that sound less like a solo artist finding himself and more like a band warming up in the rehearsal room. And that's exactly what was happening. To promote Northwinds, Coverdale needed a live band. Micky Moody was the obvious first call. He'd been there from the beginning, co-writing tracks, playing on both albums, a musical anchor of the whole solo period. But Moody had a suggestion. The blues rock sound they'd been building, he argued, needed 2 guitars, a dual guitar attack, harmonies, counterpoint, the kind of interplay that gives a live band its identity. So they went looking for a second guitarist, and they found Bernie Marsden. Marsden had been doing the rounds, Wild Turkey, Babe Ruth, various session and touring gigs, and then Moody brought him in. The introduction happened in the old-fashioned way. A pub in London, a conversation about blues and soul music, and an immediate personal connection with Coverdale that apparently made the decision pretty straightforward. Marsden was in. Marsden then brought in bassist Neil Murray, whom he knew from the band National Health. Murray was technically an accomplished player with a fluid, groove-oriented style that fit the band's rhythm and blues direction perfectly. For drums, they recruited Dave "Duck" Dowell, a powerhouse who'd previously played with Brian Auger's Oblivion Express and a band called Streetwalkers, and keyboardist Brian Johnston rounded out the lineup of the earliest rehearsals and club shows. These musicians were originally hired as salaried session players, temporary touring band. That was the plan. The plan lasted about 1 rehearsal. Down in the Soho basement, something clicked. The band started rearranging Coverdale's solo material, adding riffs, layering the dual guitars, finding a collective heaviness that the studio recordings hadn't quite captured. And Coverdale, watching it happen in real time, made a decision. This wasn't a backing band, this was a real band. He scrapped the idea of a temporary project on the spot, and they officially adopted the name David Coverdale's Whitesnake, taken directly from the 4th track of that debut solo album. They played their first official live show on March 3rd, 1976 at Lincoln Technical College. Not exactly Madison Square Garden, but every legend starts somewhere. The club run generated buzz, not massive chart-topping buzz, but enough for EMI International to take notice. The catch was that the label wasn't ready to commit to a full album. They'd seen too many post-Purple solo projects fizzle out to go all in on an unknown quantity with a new band, so instead they offered a compromise: go record an EP, prove yourselves, show us what this thing actually sounds like in the studio. Coverdale agreed, and in April 1978, just a few weeks after that first gig, the band walked into Central Recorders in London with 1 week and 4 tracks to lay down the entire EP. Producing the session was Martin Birch. If the name sounds familiar, it should. Birch was a legendary engineer and producer behind some of Deep Purple's most important records, and then he'd go on to work with Iron Maiden throughout their classic run in the 80s. Having him in the room for Whitesnake's first proper session wasn't just a practical choice, it was a statement of intent. There was one lineup change worth noting. Brian Johnston, the original keyboardist who'd rehearsed with the band and played the early club shows, was replaced for the studio sessions by Pete Soley. The band's still evolving in real time, even as the tape was rolling. The EP opens with Come On, co-written by Coverdale and Marsden, and it does exactly what an opening track should do. It's up-tempo, high energy, built around a driving boogie rock guitar riff from Marsden that immediately announces the dual guitar identity of this new band. Coverdale's vocals trade punches with the guitars in a call and response dynamic, and Pete Soli's synthesizers give the whole thing a late 70s rock sheen, a statement of arrival. Bloody Mary follows, and it's looser and more fun, a cheeky barrelhouse rock and roller driven by rolling piano and Neil Murray's bouncing bass line. Micky Moody's slide guitar goes right into the pocket here, adding that southern rock meets British blues flavor that had been his calling card since the Whitesnake days. It's the sound of a band enjoying themselves, which, after everything Coverdale has been through in the previous 2 years, feels significant. Then comes Steal Away, mid-tempo, moody, a blues rocker about life on the road. And here's something notable about this one. It's the only track on the EP credited to the entire 6-piece lineup. Every member's name is on it. It's the sound of a collective, a proper band working together in a room, and you can feel the Murray and Dowie rhythm section locking in underneath those shifting guitar solos in a way that sounds completely lived in for a band that has only existed for a matter of weeks. And then there's Ain't No Love in the Heart of the City. Here's what makes this track extraordinary. Coverdale almost didn't record it. It was a cover, Bobby Blue Bland's 1974 R&B song, and at the time it was something close to an afterthought, a filler track, something to round out the session. What actually happened was that Coverdale delivered one of the most emotionally devastating vocal performances of its career over a moody, clean guitar arpeggio that had a slow-burning arrangement that strips everything back to its bare essentials. No pyrotechnics, no dual guitar attack, just his voice, the groove, and a melody that gets completely inside you. It became Whitesnake's first major hit. It became a live anthem so powerful that audiences would sing the entire chorus back, completely a cappella, while Coverdale stood at the microphone and just let it happen. It is still, to this day, one of the first songs people think of when they think of Whitesnake, and it was almost an afterthought. That's the thing about the right song at the right moment, you don't always see it coming. The EP was released in June 1978. Later that September, United Artists packaged it for international markets by adding 4 tracks from the Northwind session: Keep On Giving Me Love, Queen of Hearts, Only My Soul, and Breakdown, turning it into an 8-track mini-album. It meant that to many listeners outside the UK, their first encounter with Whitesnake was actually a hybrid of the new band and the final solo recordings, which in hindsight is a pretty perfect document of exactly how one became the other. The Snakebite EP did what it needed to do. It proved the band was real, it gave EMI something concrete to work with, and it opened the door to the next stage, a full-length debut album, more studio time, and a growing sense that Whitesnake wasn't just a project David Coverdale was running in the background. It was the main event. And then something happened that nobody quite saw coming. A phone call, an old friend, a keyboard player who'd frankly needed no introduction to anyone who'd been following the story from the beginning. John Lord was coming home. Next time we covered the return of Deep Purple's founding members, his decision to join Whitesnake full-time, and the recording of Trouble, the album that finally definitively announced that Whitesnake had arrived. So that will be coming up. In the meantime, check out this playlist, Deep Purple album reviews, telling the story of Deep Purple from the beginning, and I'm also branching out to the side projects, including Whitesnake, Rainbow. I'll do a little bit of Black Sabbath, the Ian Gillan Band, Gillan, and so on. So thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and see you in the next one.